What happens when one of music's most legendary divas sits down with America's most beloved weatherman, and the conversation goes completely off the rails? This morning's Today Show interview with Chaka Khan and Al Roker did exactly that, leaving both the studio and the audience stunned. The day began like any other inside Studio 1A. Al Roker, fresh off his weather forecast, welcomed the 10-time Grammy-winning queen of funk to the couch. Chaka Khan, radiant in a flowing purple caftan and her trademark curls, had come to promote her new memoir. Her team had specifically asked for Al, trusting his warmth and easy style for such a personal conversation. "Good morning," Al said with his signature grin. "We're here with the incomparable Chaka Khan." "Thank you for having me, Al," Chaka replied, nodding graciously. At first, everything flowed smoothly. They reminisced about her childhood in Chicago, her early success with Rufus, and the stories behind her rise to stardom. Chaka shared anecdotes with candor, even opening up about her struggles with addiction and the long road to recovery. "I felt it was important to be honest," she said, her tone heavy with sincerity. "Too many people in our community suffer in silence. If my story can help someone else, then the pain was worth sharing." Al nodded. "That takes tremendous courage. And speaking of courage, you've also never held back when it comes to criticizing the music industry. In your book, you describe record labels as exploitative, especially toward artists of color." Chaka's eyes lit with fire. "Exploitative doesn't even cover it. The system was designed to break us. They built empires on our backs while we were left with scraps. Some of those contracts were nothing less than modern-day slavery." The air in the studio shifted. Al leaned forward carefully. "That's a very strong comparison. Slavery? It's the truth," Chaka shot back, her voice sharp. "When you sign away your publishing rights for nothing, when you're forced to sing music you hate, when you have no control over your art, what would you call it?" "I understand the frustration with unfair business practices," Al said slowly, weighing each word. "But don't you think comparing contracts to slavery might be a bit extreme?" The room went still. Chaka fixed him with a hard stare that made even the camera crew falter. "Extreme?" she repeated, her voice low but cutting. "Al, with all due respect, you've spent your whole career in television. You've been celebrated, supported, and protected. You've never had your culture stolen, your royalties manipulated, or your talent treated as nothing more than a product. I lived that. I survived that. So if I call it slavery, it's because that's exactly what it felt like." Al raised his hands in a calming gesture, his smile now strained. "I'm not trying to diminish your truth, Chaka. I'm just suggesting there may be other words." But she cut him off, her voice now booming through Studio 1A. "Words matter, Al, and the word is slavery. If that makes people uncomfortable, good. It should. More appropriate for who?" Chaka demanded, her voice booming with the same power that had carried stadiums for decades. "For your comfortable morning show audience who'd rather sip coffee than face the ugly truth about how their favorite music gets made?" The studio froze. The only sound was the hum of cameras still rolling. Al's eyes flicked nervously toward the producers, his smile gone, his grip tightening on the cue cards. "I think we're getting a little off track here," he said carefully, his voice edged with tension. "Why don't we talk about your new music? You've been collaborating with some younger artists lately." "Don't you dare change the subject," Chaka cut in, her finger stabbing the air between them. "You opened this door when you questioned my words. You want to talk about what's appropriate? What's appropriate is telling the truth, that this industry has been exploiting Black artists for decades. Pretending otherwise is willful ignorance." Al's composure began to unravel. His voice tightened. "Look, I respect your perspective, but this is a morning show. Our viewers tune in for uplifting conversations, not lectures about systemic oppression." The temperature in the room dropped. Chaka leaned forward, her presence filling the space. "Lectures?" Her voice thundered. "You think me speaking my truth is a lecture?" "This is the problem, Al. The moment a Black woman raises her voice about injustice, we're called angry, difficult, too much. That's not what I meant at all," Al shot back, but his tone was strained, defensive. "Then what did you mean?" Chaka pressed, her eyes blazing. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're more concerned with keeping your audience comfortable than actually listening to what I have to say." Al's face flushed crimson. For a moment, the unflappable weatherman America adored seemed to vanish. "Chaka, I've been doing this for over 30 years, he said, his voice sharper now, cutting through the silence. I've interviewed thousands of people from every walk of life. I know how to conduct a respectful interview. Chaka didn't blink. Do you? She shot back instantly. Because right now it feels like you're policing my language. You're toning down my truth to make it easier for your audience to swallow. That's not respect, Al. That's control. Behind the cameras, producers were waving frantically, desperate to cut to commercial. But neither Al nor Chaka seemed to notice. They were locked in, eyes blazing, words colliding like sparks in dry brush. I'm not trying to control anything, Al snapped, his smile long gone. I'm trying to have a productive conversation. But when you come on here throwing around inflammatory comparisons and accusations, it makes it very difficult to have meaningful dialogue. Chaka's entire posture shifted. She straightened, her voice deepening into something volcanic. Inflammatory? She echoed, each syllable heavy as stone. The audience, both in studio and at home, knew they were about to witness a moment that would not be forgotten. Chaka's voice cracked like a whip. The truth is inflammatory to you? The fact that I lost millions because some executive decided my music belonged to him? That's inflammatory? The fact that I couldn't even perform my own songs without paying royalties to people who never wrote a single note? That's inflammatory? That's not what I said, Al replied, his voice climbing higher, fraying under the pressure. I'm talking about the way you're presenting these issues. There's a difference between sharing your story and making broad generalizations about an entire industry. Chaka laughed, but it was hollow, sharp, almost dangerous. Broad generalizations? Al, do you know how many of my peers from the 70s and 80s are living in poverty right now? Do you know how many died broke while the labels that bled them dry are still raking in millions? This isn't a generalization. This is a pattern. I sympathize with that, Al said quickly, leaning back in his chair as if trying to put distance between himself and the storm gathering across from him. But coming on national television and making these sweeping statements without nuance, without context. He hesitated, then dropped the word like a stone. It's irresponsible. The silence that followed was electric. Crew members froze. One or two even stepped back, sensing the explosion about to come. Irresponsible? Chaka repeated, her eyes narrowing to slits. Her voice lowered, slower, more dangerous. You want to talk about irresponsible? What's irresponsible is sitting in your comfortable chair with your comfortable salary and telling a woman who lived decades of systemic exploitation that she's irresponsible for daring to speak about it. That's not fair, Al shot back, his voice cracking under the weight of her words. You don't know anything about what I've faced in this industry, about my experiences. You're right, I don't, Chaka said, her tone razor sharp. But I do know you've never had a record executive tell you your natural hair wasn't marketable. I know you've never watched someone else get rich off a song you poured your soul into. I know you've never been told to smile more, be more grateful, be less angry, less black, about injustice. Al's jaw tightened. For the first time, his voice shed its practiced warmth and came out raw. You think because I'm successful now, I haven't faced discrimination? You think I haven't had to fight for respect? I've been the target of racist attacks, of threats, of harassment. Don't lecture me about struggle. Then you should understand better than anyone, Chaka fired back, her voice rising, filling every corner of the studio. You should know why it's necessary to speak truth to power. And yet here you are doing their work for them by trying to shut me down. I'm not trying to silence anyone, Al barked, his tone now matching hers, the tension cutting like glass. But there's a time and a place for everything. And a morning show interview about your memoir is not the place for a political manifesto. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just gone off. The studio wasn't just quiet. It was stunned. Everyone knew they were watching a moment that would replay on headlines, feeds, and screens for days to come. Political manifesto? Chaka's voice climbed to a new register, slicing through the studio. Talking about my own life is a political manifesto now? This is exactly what I'm saying, Al. The minute we speak uncomfortable truths, suddenly we're political. Suddenly we're inappropriate. suddenly were too much. The tension in Studio 1A was suffocating. Camera operators froze mid-zoom, glancing toward the producers who stood paralyzed, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut to commercial. "Look," Al said, dragging a hand across his face, frustration breaking through his usual warmth. "I came into this wanting to celebrate your career, your new book, your music, your legacy. Instead, we're locked in an argument about industry politics our viewers didn't sign up for." "Our viewers?" Chaka repeated, her voice dripping with venom. "You mean your viewers? The ones you bend over backwards to protect from reality. God forbid they hear something more challenging than the weather forecast over their morning coffee." Al's face flushed deep red, edging into purple. "That's completely unfair, and you know it. The Today Show has covered serious issues, social justice, inequality, systemic problems, in every industry. Safe segments," Chaka shot back. "Sanitized segments, stories you control, narratives you polish until they won't ruffle feathers. But when someone like me sits here and lays bare the raw truth of exploitation, suddenly it's too much. Suddenly it's out of bounds," Al snapped. His composure was gone. "The raw truth? You want the raw truth?" His voice cracked with anger. "The raw truth is that you came here to promote a book, and instead you've turned this into a personal attack. On me, on this show. You've questioned my integrity, my character, my entire understanding of discrimination." Chaka surged to her feet so fast her chair skidded backward across the studio floor. "You're damn right I'm angry, Al. I'm angry that after 50 years in this business, I still have to justify my right to speak about my own experiences. I'm angry that even now, with all I've accomplished, I'm being told to tone it down. Calm down. Be more reasonable." Al stood too, looming taller, but somehow diminished beside her presence. "Nobody is telling you to calm down. But if you can't sit here and have a civil conversation without turning it into a confrontation, then maybe television interviews aren't the right platform for you." The words hit like a thunderclap. The studio air went dead. Not a breath, not a whisper. Chaka's voice dropped, low and lethal. "Television interviews aren't the right platform for me." She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. "Let me tell you something, Al Roker. I've been doing television interviews since before you knew what a weather map was. I've sat across from Johnny Carson, from Barbara Walters, from Oprah Winfrey, and not one of them, not a single one, ever had the audacity to tell me what platform was right for me." Al's eyes flickered. He knew he had crossed a line, but the pride in his stance, the stiffness in his jaw, told the crew he wasn't going to back down. The silence wasn't just tense now, it was explosive. Everyone in Studio 1A braced for the collision that was about to come. "That's not what I meant, and you know it," Al said, his voice straining to hold on to calm. "I'm talking about having a productive conversation instead of—" Chaka cut him off, her voice exploding like a thunderclap. "Productive? You think I'm here manufacturing controversy for fun? You think I enjoy having to defend my right to speak about my own damn life? This isn't entertainment, Al. This is my reality. This is decades of pain, dismissed in a heartbeat because it doesn't fit your precious morning show script." The control room went into chaos. Producers waved frantically for a cut, but the director kept the feed rolling. This wasn't just TV. It was a train wreck they couldn't look away from. Al's jaw tightened. His hand rubbed across his forehead as though he could smooth the moment back into order. "I never dismissed your pain," he said, his tone uneven. "I'm asking why everything has to turn into a battle. Why can't we just sit here, talk about your book, your career, your music? Why can't we celebrate what you've accomplished?" Chaka leaned forward, her eyes burning through him. "Because my achievements don't live in some fantasy bubble, Al. My career, my songs, my book, they were all carved out of struggle. You can't strip the art from the artist, and you damn sure can't strip me from the oppression that shaped my life." Al threw up his hands, exasperated. "Fine. But does every conversation have to be a lecture on injustice? Can't we just once talk about the joy? The success? The positive?" Chaka let out a sharp, bitter laugh that cut across the studio. "Positive? You want me to smile and serve you the highlight reel while ignoring the blood and sweat it was built on? That's not celebration, that's erasure." That's you asking me to perform happiness and bury the truth. Al's voice cracked, sliding into desperation. I'm asking for balance. I'm asking for a conversation that doesn't alienate half our audience before we even get to the good stuff. Chaka's finger shot out, trembling with fury. There it is. There it is. Not my story. Not my truth. Not the 50 years I bled into this business. No, it's always about your audience. Your ratings. Your comfort level. Al's face went crimson. His words came out clipped, defensive. You know what? Yes, I care about our audience. Millions of people wake up with us every morning. They come here for information, for inspiration, not to be battered with rage about how broken the world is. The studio seemed to shrink around them. Chaka's voice rose into a full-throated crescendo that rattled the cameras on their mounts. Rage? You call 50 years of clawing for respect, of demanding dignity, of being told to sit down and smile, you call that an angry tirade? Congratulations, Al Roker. You just proved every point I've been making. Her hands moved with finality, unclipping her microphone. Each snap of plastic against fabric echoed like a gunshot. The entire set sat frozen, crew, audience, even Al himself, watching her decide in real time that she was done. You want your comfortable morning show? Chaka's voice cut through the air like a blade. You want the sanitized version of black success, the one that never challenges anyone, never makes anyone squirm? Fine, you can have it without me. Al's face paled. He leaned forward, his voice pleading. Chaka, please. Let's just take a breath. We can find common ground here. She laughed bitterly, the sound sharp as broken glass. Common ground? That disappeared the moment you decided my lived experience was too much for your viewers. It disappeared when you chose the image of your show over the respect of the woman sitting across from you. Al reached out with one last, desperate attempt to salvage the interview. I do respect you. I respect your talent, your music, your strength, everything you've overcome. I respect all of that. Chaka stopped at the edge of the stage, her back half turned. Slowly, she looked over her shoulder, her eyes blazing with disappointment and fury. No, you respect the version of me that fits neatly in your little box. The grateful entertainer who smiles, sings her hits, and maybe tells a sanitized struggle story to make everybody feel good about how far we've come. But the moment I show you me, the real me, the woman who refuses to sugarcoat the truth, you call me inappropriate. Al shook his head, his voice faltering. That's not true. It's completely true, she snapped. And the worst part? You don't even realize you're doing it. You've been conditioned to expect black women to perform gratitude, to soften ourselves so people like you feel comfortable. And the second we show up with fire and truth, you panic, you fold. You label it too much. The studio was suffocatingly silent. No laughter, no polite applause, just the low electric hum of cameras and lights bearing witness to history. Chaka straightened, her voice now low and cold, each word landing like a hammer. I hope your audience enjoys their comfortable morning, Al. But don't you dare book another black artist and expect them to perform for your comfort. Some of us have too much self-respect for that. With regal poise, she turned and walked toward the exit, every step radiating defiance. For 50 years, she had been crowned the Queen of Funk. Today, she wore that crown like armor. Al stood frozen, his lips moving soundlessly. Finally, he croaked, Chaka, wait. She didn't. She never looked back. The cameras caught everything. Al Roker standing helpless at center stage, his smile long gone, his show unraveling in real time. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he muttered, We'll be right back. But she was already gone, leaving behind only stunned silence, a shaken host, and the undeniable truth that some storms don't pass quietly. Some storms arrive with fire, tear through the room, and make damn sure they're never forgotten.